John Ondrasik, you might know, of course you know him, also Five for Fighting. He joins me, prolific singer songwriter. I mean, I think he's pretty iconic. Everybody knows his voice. He joins me now via Skype. John, I just so appreciate you joining me. And you wrote this song. There's sometimes I can't listen to certain songs all the way through because I'm not an emotional person, but sometimes there's just like a pitch or something that just gets me, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I can't listen anymore. And this is one of those songs. It's and the video that goes along with it. I want to talk to you about what our government has done and the weird sort of defense that we saw of Hamas in the wake of October 7th. And I think this just speaks to something so much larger. But why I wanted to ask about the title of your song first and foremost. We are not okay. And the way that you sing it in the chorus as well, there's a lot of emphasis on okay. Talk to me about that.
Well, first, Dana, it's great to be with you. Longtime fan. I appreciate your willingness to fight the big battles. And this is, I think, the biggest battle of all. I think October 7th, the atrocities reminded us of 9/11, frankly, also the Afghan withdrawal. But really the aftermath, within 24 hours, you had thousands of people celebrating in Times Square. And then all of a sudden you start seeing the moral collapse of all our institutions. Certainly the media very quickly for some became a Hamas mouthpiece. Obviously our college campuses, which we've known for decades have been a bastion of moral rot and anti-Semitism. And as you just mentioned, members of Congress basically spouting Hamas talking points. And as you mentioned yesterday, Ms. Tlaib could not find herself to condemn the rape and massacre of women at a concert. So it's a symptom of a much deeper problem. Folks have talked about that. And I think for me, kind of seeing that, there's something deeply wrong in the culture. The UN minister today just said, well, we don't look at Hamas as a terrorist organization. So many institutions have collapsed, and we're losing our children. Half of our kids between 18 and 24 side with Hamas over Israel. 20% believe that the Holocaust never happened. And if we don't stand up and address that, we're going to lose this battle, this global battle for civilization.
Now, I think that's a great point. Talking to our friend John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting, his new song, We Are Not Okay. You mentioned Rashida Tlaib and the inability of her to condemn Hamas using rape as a weapon of war. And I'm amazed at Hamas is an elected terrorist government, and they were elected 2000 and so popular that they actually suspended elections because they thought they were going to overtake Fatah in West Bank. And when the argument of, well, it was reaction to the occupation, they were fighting against the occupation. John, in what reality is putting a baby in an oven or shooting women in their copulatory organs or raping women or shooting pets? When is that an acceptable? How is that an acceptable form of resistance? That's what I feel like they're arguing.
Well, you're right. This is a moral issue. And if you cannot condemn putting babies in ovens and burning them in front of their mothers and filming it and sending it to their families on Facebook without words like context or but, then nothing is evil. And I think it really goes to this kind of warped mindset that is infecting all aspects of the culture of oppressor versus oppressee. So if you're the perceived oppressee, all of a sudden you can do no wrong. And if you're the oppressor, you can do no right. Of course, this is not about the Palestinians. Syria, murdered tens of thousands Palestinians. They would not allow human aid to come in. And there were no marches. There were no protests on college campuses. So this really is this kind of mindset that's infecting our kids and our society. And you see it in many aspects of the culture. And the saddest thing to me, Dana, which is I'm ashamed about, is the silence of the arts, the silence of the music industry. You were 2 years old, but I had the honor of playing the concert for New York after 9/11. And you remember, I remember walking down 7th Avenue. And of course, there was the pictures of those who were missing. And our hearts broke because we knew they weren't coming home. But could you imagine back in the day, people ripping those posters down? So we're really seeing, frankly, for the first time, I think people are opening their eyes to the depths of how we've fallen. And it's not just in America, it's the whole world. And if we don't stand up to it using the arts, because, our old friend Andrew Breitbart used to say, politics is downstream of culture.
Yep.
Folks don't understand that. And the fact that all the artists, iconic artists that stood up for America after 9/11 have been silent, many of them Jewish, is a great disgrace. And I'm working on a few things to hopefully change that.
And you made such a great point with that. I know we were going to have you join us, I think a week or so ago, but you had an opportunity to kind of dress down an organization in the arts, and you took that opportunity, understandably. And we were like, yes, go do this. And it's crazy that you have to that people don't have the, I don't know if it's a willful awareness or if they just want to ignore it, but they have to have it pointed out to them by other people that this is bad. There's no justification of this. You can't just gloss over it. It's bad. It happened. People are defending it. And good on you for doing that, because it's not easy to do. And it comes at great cost.
Well, look, the first lyric of my song is, "This is a time for choosing." And I think it is. And we have to decide. You can't bury your heads in the sand anymore. And the last image of my video is Martin Luther King basically saying, if you're silent in front of evil, you're complicit. And we're seeing a lot in 1938 in 2024. A lot of the same excuses. Some of my artist friends, well, yeah, Hamas is bad, but I'm worried. I'm scared for my family. I don't want my concerts protested. And I'm like, look, I get it. When Israel shared my video on their social media, I quickly understood what Jews go through every day, the vitriol, the death threats. But I said, look, these arguments are exactly what people made in 1938. And every voice that comes out for the right thing makes us all stronger. So the silence cannot continue. And as I mentioned, the arts is how we get to the kids. A lot of these politicians and pundits think their speeches matter and their articles matter. Nobody cares about that, the kids. We have to use the arts. So hopefully we can gather some more artists of like mind and inspire others to speak up as this song kind of resonates around the world.
Talking with our friend John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting, about his new song, "We Are Not Okay." You touched on something, John, that I thought I wanted to come back to, because you were talking about how the youth, particularly, and I think there's a foreign policy illiteracy that not just affects the United States, but a lot of other countries. But there's also this idea that goes along with it that the means justify, or the end justifies the means. That it's like this perversion of fighting for what you think is good, that if you can use evil tactics, it's okay. And it mainstreams evil because, if you get to the same end, then that means this isn't really evil if you're still able to get to your ends, right? And I think kind of that's at the root of this too.
It is. It's kind of a culty kind of phenomenon. And you see it with so many of our kids. And it's horrifying. It's scary. But as you mentioned, you used the word mainstream, which was interesting. I was talking to a young man, a friend of my son, who's 21 years old, and I asked him, it's Hamas-Israel thing. What do you think? Well, Hamas. And I'm like, why do you say that? And he goes, because it's mainstream. Because it's it's cool. It's what the in kids think. And then when I told him, like, but about, how they basically slaughtered all these people at the concert, he goes, well, a lot of that's kind of high propaganda. I go, let me show you some videos. And when he saw that, he was stunned. So the fact that, academia, well, let me put this, elite academia, don't send your kids to Harvard, send them to Texas or Alabama.
There you go.
But, elite academia has been pushing this dogma for years. And now those folks that were in school, 10 years ago are now running our major media organizations, many in our tech business, and frankly, many in the arts. So it's not surprising this is happening, but we can't just sit here and lament it. We have to stand up to it, each of us in our ways, whether you're a songwriter, talk show, look, Mark Levin shared my video, and Deborah Messing. This is not a political issue. If we can't get together on the fact that Hamas is evil and we're losing our kids, then it's our fault.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do.
And we're considering sending essentially Hamas $9.1 billion in a supplemental, which in the form of aid, because, all of the entities over there that are just distributing everything, they're not run by Hamas. I mean, they just found out that the UN headquarters over there in Gaza City had had Hamas tunnels underneath it.
If it wasn't true, it sounds like a bad joke. It's a mad world. The world's gone insane. And the fact that the Biden administration is floating a Palestinian state to reward Hamas for atrocities, again, in what alternate universe are we living in? But look, we saw this in Afghanistan. the extraordinary success with what that was Afghanistan. I wrote a song called Blood on My Hands.
Yep.
That called them out. We saw this in Ukraine when our first act, when Russia invaded, was to offer Zelensky a plane ticket. Hey, abandon your people. And now we're seeing this kind of turnabout on Israel. So again, I think I don't look at this as a political issue, but I think we have to speak loudly when our leaders are starting to slip with their moral spine.
Last question for you. Our friend John Ondrasik, Five for Fighting. You mentioned your son was saying, and I've heard this from, I mean, kids just, they're not having this presented to them, and whether in colleges or even in high schools or junior highs, that I get it that it's, kids all go through a rebellious period, right? You want to be the rebel. And nowadays, it seems like to be rebellious is to look like what everyone else thinks alternative is, and to do all of the things that people think is alternative. So it's still like another hive mind action. But maybe I'm romanticizing, how my folks grew up and maybe my grandparents grew up. But it really seemed like the cool thing back in the day when we were way more original was to actually go against the grain. When did we lose that? I mean, we're America. We went against the grain from the onset. Like, when did we lose that?
Yeah, no, it is interesting because both my kids, don't understand their friends. My daughter actually just graduated from NYU, but it's not just our kids. Look, Rolling Stone used to be about speaking to the man. It used to be about rock and roll. It used to be about speaking up to power. It used to be about human rights, justice. They won't even cover the Hamas issue like they should. I sent them my video. They're cowards.
They put they put that one Boston terrorist on their cover.
You know what? So much of this is a cultural problem, and it goes way beyond Hamas and Israel. But again, it's our obligation to provide the counterpoint because we're in the right. We're in the right. And I think the silent majority understands that. But silent majorities become silent minorities if people don't speak up. So we have a lot to do. I got some projects. I'll be going to Israel probably in the next month or so. So, I'll keep you in the loop. And thank you for, speaking to the organization. One thing that's critical, I've got thousands of emails from Jewish folks around the world. They feel abandoned. They wonder what happened. So every voice that says, hey, look, we got your back. One doesn't have to be Jewish to condemn Hamas as evil.
Right.
One has to be human. So thank you for being human. Again, big fan. Say hi to Chris, and hopefully we can do this again one day.
Will do. And big fan of you too, John, and appreciate you using your talent and your skills to really add to this and help convince in a way that really you can and so many others can't. We're grateful for it. John Ondrasik, the song We Are Not Okay. Always appreciate you, my friend. Godspeed.
Take care. Thank you.
Of course. You too.